Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Surprise, surprise, it's another Deaf Crocodile. This is The Assassin of the Tsar, starring Malcolm McDowell and Oleg Yankovskiy, who you're probably familiar with the Tarkovsky films Mirror and Nostalgia. This is Deaf Crocodile Spine number 9. The gorgeous slipcover. There's the alternate art, or the art you'll get if you just get the Blu-ray without the slip. There's Yankovskiy as Nicholas II. So this is an interesting little film. It's a bit of a slow burn. Directed by Karen Shaknarazov, who also has Zero Grad in the Deaf Crocodile catalogue, which I haven't watched yet. He also did White Tiger, the tank film, in the early 2000s, I believe. And he's actually the head of Moss Film currently. This was the last film made by the USSR in 1990, before they changed just at the end of the thawing. And again, it's an interesting film, a slow burn, but well worth checking out. It is about a man, played by Malcolm McDowell, who is in an asylum for the mentally disturbed, and he claims that a little 5-year-old girl wearing a red coat, it's not Don't Look Now, honest, told him that he was the man who assassinated both Tsar Alexander II in 1881 and Nicholas II in 1918. But considering one of those people died in 1938, and this is current day Russia. And Oleg Yankovskiy plays Dr. Smirnov, who has just arrived at this facility and begins to be fascinated by this case. Both McDowell and Yankovskiy are fantastic, and they both play dual roles. Malcolm McDowell obviously plays the mental patient, and he plays the assassin, because we get flashbacks, which mainly focus on 1918, but we do get flashbacks from 1881 as well. And Yankovskiy plays Dr. Smirnov, and he plays Nicholas II. And if you look at the pictures, Yankovskiy is almost a double of Nicholas II. So what on earth is going on? As Dr. Smirnov becomes more and more obsessed about the case, and the two men slowly kind of meld, and we see the events of the past. It's shot in 4:3. It really has that kind of Russian sense of doom and melancholy. Obviously we know what's coming as far as the retelling of the events and flashback, but it's done really well, and again it has that just ring of impending doom, and certainly the 1918 execution of Nicholas II and his family is done brutally and realistically. It is a film just about changing tides and changing politics, and what was acceptable a few years ago is now unacceptable, and finding your place in history and wanting to go down in history. Some people embrace that, and some people shy away from that. And Malcolm McDowell's character, or perceived character from the past, does that with aplomb. It's a very intense performance by McDowell, but he never goes over the top that sometimes he has been guilty of in the past. It is a very measured performance. But again, he's playing opposite Oleg Yankovskiy, who can play haunted, and somebody who is falling apart mentally quite well. He's worked with Tarkovsky after all. Both men sweat quite a bit in the film, as we kind of hurtle towards the inevitable conclusion. What I really like about the film is the fact that nothing's really explained as far as, well, how can this be? How can this person know all these details of somebody who died like 50 years earlier? It's just more a psychological film about the past and present colliding. Do we inhabit, or do other people from the past inhabit us? Reincarnation, mental illness, and all that good stuff. It is a very nice release as well, in the sense that you get both versions of the film. So they did a take in Russian, and then they would do a take in English. So it's presented here, both 2K restorations of the English language version of the film, which is 104 minutes, which I haven't watched yet, and a 2K restoration of the Russian language version of the film, which has got a slightly different edit and a completely different score, which is 102 minutes, and that's the version that I saw. So Malcolm McDowell is obviously speaking English, but he's dubbed in Russian. Because for me, you always do what the country's language of the film is first, and then you can go back to the English. But the real treat on the disc is an hour-long interview with Malcolm McDowell about his experiences going to Russia to make this, and it's moderated by Dennis Bartok, co-founder of Deaf Crocodile. So that's almost worth the price of admission, because Malcolm McDowell just has some wonderful stories about going to Russia at the end of the thawing. And he said, a lot of the Russian actors, when they did the English takes, were just learning English phonetically, and some of it wasn't that impressive. But then he didn't attempt to learn Russian within the 2 weeks of getting offered the job, essentially. And there's an hour-long interview with the director, co-writer Karen Shaknarazov, moderated by Dennis Bartok. There's a new commentary track by Sam Dane, which again I haven't listened to yet. And again, the booklet is essentially just one big essay, which is very informative. So you learn, if you don't know your Russian history, it is educational as well as being entertaining. I mean, again, it's not a barn burner by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a slow burner, and it does pay off. It's got great performances, and again, it's about an interesting times in Russian history, made an even more interesting time, perhaps, in Russian history, or the history of the USSR. And again, I don't get paid by Deaf Crocodile, unfortunately, but it's a wonderful release. 2 versions of the film, and hour-long interviews with both McDowell and the director, because there's lots of gems in McDowell's hour-long interview. So I would highly recommend it. Again, for me, it's not a masterpiece or anything like that, but it is very good, with really good performances and a very interesting idea. So that's The Assassin of the Tsar. That's only 3 Deaf Crocodile releases I've watched and 3 random reviews from those films, but we'll see what happens with more Deaf Crocodiles, because we should really support Deaf Crocodiles because the poor things can't hear. So thanks very much for watching this random review. Please let me know if you've seen The Assassin of the Tsar, or should it be The Assassin of the Tsars, and hopefully join me again for more random reviews. This is Soldier Ronan from Soldier Ronan Films, saying farewell.